Great. I'm trying to figure out how to post it on Facebook,
Yay!
and they just change things around so much.
I know. Well, we're here. Hopefully, people will see. If not, they will catch the recording. But welcome to the Mind Body Energy Project. Happy Wednesday. Happy Hump Day.
Yeah. Welcome to our live event.
Welcome
These
to
are
our
always fun.
live event. Yes. So if you are listening to the podcast on iTunes, you can always join Tiffany and I every other Wednesday for our live discussions on our Facebook page. So just go to MBE Project on Facebook and you can join us and tune in. So, my love, how was your week with your perspectives?
Oh, it was great. I really started. I can't not do it. I can't not turn
Every
my
time,
music
every
on.
week.
I know. I thought I had it down too.
I did it this time ahead of time, so I was good this time.
I tried to, but I didn't. It's been a day. Okay. Perspective. So I spent the week prior when we first started this topic, hearing a lot of things about or observing a lot that had to do with me and my triggers and perspectives.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was no easy task. I dealt with it, as you have to. But this week I started to hear other people's perspectives and their one-sided perspective when I was listening to stories, which was really interesting.
And so, what did you do?
Well, that was another internal struggle because I was like, how much do I field of just letting them talk, or how much do I recommend, like, hey, maybe look at it from this side or maybe this side,
Were
so
they friends or were they like what type of relationships are we talking?
mostly friends. Yeah, I think mostly friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that I did it to any strangers this time around.
Yeah, I don't tend to really offer my point of view unless someone asks. Like my friends, they could tell me a whole bunch of stuff and I'll be thinking in my head like, that's interesting. But unless they ask me, then I
That's
will
nice
share.
of you.
Well, yeah. Well, I think it's because, I'm just that way. I always figure like, people will ask you if they want your point of view. I know some people don't, but that's just the way I function. And then I hate sometimes where I'm just venting and someone gives me like a truckload of advice I didn't ask for. And I'm like, I'm just getting it off my chest. So thanks.
Yeah. That's interesting, though. Here's an interesting perspective. I want to say hi to Gina because she said hi, ladies. Thank you for joining.
Hi,
Gina. That's an interesting perspective because for me, I have this weird relationship or perspective with venting, because at one point when I was studying, like, I think it was probably like Buddhism to some degree, that I was hearing, I would like filter information and think about how, like, if I'm going to spew all this stuff out and it's going to be negative and it's just me getting it off my chest, like you say, then it's stuff that it doesn't need to come out that way. Like, I should keep it inside and like work with it so that it's not affecting me the way it would. And then I'm also not putting it out in the world. Now, that was one perspective of it. The other perspective is I do believe in emotions, and when we stifle them down and we house them, they can afflict our physical being as well as our relationships and other things around us. So
I tend to do both. So if it's like, say I was talking to you and you were really irritating me, and in the moment I knew I could not conjure Buddha in my mouth at that moment, I would not necessarily process in that moment with you. I might vent to like my cousin or something and be like, just so I can like talk it out in the process.
Yeah.
But, then there are times too where I am like directly in communication with someone and you have to. Like I have to make that choice to do the internal dialogue right then and there so that I can respond from a space of, but it's just like, I think it's situational and it's mood, because some days it's easy. I have Buddha in my mouth and I can process and I can go do, 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 and it's easy. But then there are days where I just don't feel like it and I'm cranky and whatever is going on with me. So I just like hold it, and I know I gotta like, and sometimes talking it out, like you hear what you're saying and you hear your own like cycles of like nonsense. And a lot of times that too, like you end up figuring out your own,
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, and that's the thing. I really do believe that we house all the answers we ever need. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so when and I've gotten to the point now where I hear people venting. Before, I would hear people venting and be like, "Oh, they want advice." Like
Mm-hmm.
to them, to me, it was a trigger that they were like, "I'm coming to you to tell you all this stuff because I want advice." And then a different perspective I would have is like, "You're just bitching about stuff negatively. Like this isn't useful. It's stuff that's coming out. You're hearing it again, and it's just going to be this negative cycle." So I've gone through different phases of my perspective of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But now when I listen to people, now I listen and I'm wondering, like, I try to tell them, I'm like, you have all the answers, but then I wonder sometimes if they know that they have the answers and that they will eventually figure it out, or if they just like the drama.
Well, that too, I think it comes back to, it depends on the person, because some people will share their point of view because they want to be validated, and they
Mm-hmm.
may be venting or sharing or spewing or whatever. Sometimes they just want to be heard, because a lot of times we just need to be heard. But then there are some people that sometimes they like want validation. They want you to know you're on my side. You agree with
Right.
me, this and that. But when I do it, no, I don't have. And that's why, again, like I say, I don't want a dump truck of advice, because as I'm talking, I'm literally processing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want it.
Well, this is a really great conversation that we're having, because I had a really good conversation with a friend last week, and it was about a relationship, and we were kind of just talking out the different perspectives that could be seen from each person,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking it out. But I think what we're discussing right now is a really great thing for people to hear, because it might shift their perspective when they're involved in a conversation, to say like, oh, is what I'm doing useful, and is it beneficial to where I'm trying to get to? Because I do think people very mindlessly do just vent, and they don't know what they're trying to get from it, and they don't know they actually have the answers.
Yeah, and I just want to just put a reminder, like if you are watching, like please feel free to put comments about your point of view or what's coming up for you, because we're watching that as well.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it is very interesting. I forget why, but I was thinking the other day, it's probably something I was watching on TV, but I was thinking of how a lot of times we assume like what someone needs from us, in the vein of like supporting them or being there for them or holding space for them. And a lot of times it's just as simple as saying like, how can I support you in this? Like, do you want to hear my point of view? Like just
Yeah.
asking, like, oh, friend, are you just sharing, you just letting it out? Or did you want to like go back and forth about it? Like, do you want to know what I think? And your friends, like I know
Yeah.
certain friends that they don't want to hear it. And I know certain friends that are like, hey friend, I'm telling you this because I want to know your point of view. So yeah,
Right.
it's interesting.
Clarification.
Yes. If we
We
clarify, we'd be
yeah,
so much better off.
we miss that a lot in society, I think.
Yeah. So did you have anything, I didn't see your Dear Diary, but did you have anything interesting this week come up for you about like your own perspective around anything?
Uh, do you want me to tell you that I put myself back on one of the dating apps, and I had like a dump truck of perspectives?
Is that what
No,
you shared in your Dear Diary?
no,
Oh,
actually, no, it's not. It just came to me right now, and usually I last about like 3.4 days on these apps when I go on them.
yeah.
Because it is an overload of perspectives, and then I'm putting my perspective on like somebody else's perspective, and then you're texting with people you don't know, or like people who you're presuming like they're letting the time run out so that you don't match with them because they don't like you. I mean, it is the biggest mind f. I watched it because I know we're
Yeah.
live. It's the biggest mind f, and part of that is because we're creating perspectives on people's perspectives.
Yeah.
Like we're reading profiles, and we're looking at pictures, and we're assuming things about people, and we're reading things that are written in a profile in a tone that's in our head
Right.
with a perspective on it.
From your lens, like you're trying
Right.
to, right.
Yeah. So the timing, of course, was perfect, because not for my dating life, that's not working out well,
Mhm.
but for purposes of what we're talking about, as I was going through it, I was like, wow, because I listen to myself as I'm going through this whole process. I listen to what's going on in my head. I hear the stories and the perspectives that are like, they're just flying off the handle. And I was like, well, that's really interesting, Tiffany. Really interesting.
I've never been on a dating app, but I always imagine it would be one of those things that would be interesting to me to see,
Yeah.
like the way people do craft their profiles and like what
Very
they say.
interesting.
Because the thing is like, you know, you can look at it at a very surface level and go like, oh, okay, this person likes to fly kites and they like picnics in the park. But then I think it's also interesting to me, like, even the tone of it, because I think sometimes that speaks to the person more under the surface of maybe
Oh,
their
yeah.
humor, or like a lot of people would probably lead with what they think sounds desirable, and you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that would be an interesting thing to kind of like look at and sort through. But that has
Oh,
to
yeah.
be hard because so much gets lost in
It's
translation.
so hard. It's so hard, especially for an empath.
So how this talk was not supposed to be about dating apps, but like, so then what? So like you choose someone based on their profile and then you start a dialogue?
Well, you could try to start a dialogue. This one in particular, if you match with somebody, the female has 24 hours to send a message. So it's in the ball's in the female's court. So the female has 24 hours to send a message to the male or female, whoever they're seeking. And that person that they match with has another 24 hours to respond. So not only like literally time runs out.
Right.
This is
Hey,
about
they
as
don't want you to
American as it
sleep
gets.
on it. It's like, make your choice. You better
Yeah.
get your perspective
Yeah.
together right away.
Right.
Nobody has time for
Urgency. Yeah. It is so stressful. It's
that
so
is
stressful.
hilarious.
But I'll tell you,
Uh,
we can move on from this. But if you wanted to do that as a social experiment, I mean, I'm doing it to try to like really like enrich my life, maybe to some degree.
yeah.
Um, and I'm not successful at all. So like you could go on there and it wouldn't be threatening to your relationship if you're just wanting to do investigatory work.
Just to investigate. Well,
Yeah.
have you noticed like have you had any feedback about like how people perceive you, and does it match whatever it was you thought you were projecting out?
I don't even know. I don't even think I get that far. Because I've been on it several times and I've tried different angles. I've tried being honest. I tried being what I thought people would want. I tried being like super sarcastic. I mean, I don't know what works, to be honest.
That is
Everybody's
so
perspective
funny.
is just jacked all over the place.
I see. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, it's hard enough for us to try to like understand when we're actually speaking to each other, let
Yeah.
alone trying to like read a text or a profile or like all of these other things without facial expression and body language and all of these things.
Right. Yeah. So
So,
it was an interesting thing that I realized. I was like, wow, this is an app full of perspectives probably gone wrong.
yeah. Yeah. Maybe you should come up with a whole new format instead of like dating apps. Maybe they start on the app, but then like it's like some kind of like location where everyone comes and has like, what do they call those things people do? Like speed
Meetup.
dating. Yeah, kind
Oh,
of like a meetup, but maybe like a speed date or like some kind of like social dating thing. So
I
people
don't,
at
I
least
want to
get
be
a
as
little
minimally
interaction.
involved. I want to be as minimally involved in the dating world as possible.
You may be the queen of matchmaking and don't
Nope.
even know it.
I can't. I can't.
Oh, Gina said chat rooms. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. If you could break out in chat rooms on those apps, because then you can get a little more personal. No,
I don't know. I don't know. It's all very overwhelming for me.
you look like you just got beat up by it. You're like, I
I
don't even.
feel like it. Moving right along. Tell us,
Oh my
Yolanda, about things that came up around perspectives for you this week.
Okay, and just a reminder too, if you're watching, like share with us like anything that's coming up for you or your perspectives that may be challenging this week. Um, so what happened? Oh, well, I got my hair cut,
It
obviously.
looks amazing.
Thanks, honey. Well, that was not my perspective. Oh my gosh. So, like I've been trying to transition back into my natural hair because my hair has been straightened and relaxed since I was like 12 at least. And so I had no idea what my natural hair looked like. So I have been going through this process of growing it out. That's why I had the goddess locks last year. And like, it's been a whole situation. And my hair has been in a bun like the last 6 months because it was 2 different textures. And what are you going to do? So anyway, I go to get all the relaxed, straightened hair cut off. And then when the lady like shows me, I'm like, oh,
like you cut too much.
Shocking to my, yes. So it wasn't like, I like the curls. I mean, they're fun and interesting, and it's been a fun couple days trying to figure this out. But the amount of hair that was cut off, and like, again, it looks like, to me, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I have a wig on, like, because it's so different, you know? Yeah. So it was shocking to my system. And I realized yesterday, which was day 2 of the haircut, I was like, man, I really have to shift my perspective around this, because if I'm like, oh, I hate my haircut, and I'm going to be mad every day. Yeah. And I'm going to like project that out to the world. Like, woe is me and my little haircut, you know? Yeah. So like, oh girl, get your act together. So I really had to do some, you know, introspection around it. And this morning, apparently curls like water.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you didn't know that?
I didn't know.
Questions for you.
Yes. So yeah. So today is a new day, and I was able to work on my perspective, and now I'm having fun with the hair instead of being like all kinds of shocked and confused and sad. Let's see. Oh, Hello, Jordan.
Yeah.
I love the curls. Thank you. I've also taken a lot of hair off, and there's a shock to deal with. Yes. The shock factor is real. Okay.
But you raise a really good point, because I too have hair issues.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Gina. Sorry.
It's been, my hair has been the bane of my existence since I can remember. Well, I guess probably starting in 5th grade, because up until then, you know, my mom was doing it. It didn't really matter. But the bad hair days, I mean, I remember yelling and screaming about how bad my hair was. And it would just like, it would set the tone for the rest of the day, you know? And of course, everybody else, like Lorena here, who's like fake news because she loves my hair. I think I have hair issues. But from my perspective, I do have hair issues, because every day I'm just like, what are we going to do today? How's it going to go on today? You know, at what point am I going to be pinning it back? But
that's so funny.
Yeah. And once we step outside of it and start to, like, I remember very distinctly, speaking of dating, a long time ago, I dated this one guy who I said something about my hair, and he's like, I really like your hair, like how crazy it is. And I'm like, really? You do? Like, it was so shocking to me that somebody liked my hair. And it's like,
people pay to go get their hair like that. Like, they pay money. Remember?
Listen, I'm having a good hair day today. Okay. This is like 13% of the time. So I mean, you don't judge it on this.
You can go a curl and iron. People trying to get the beachy wave, honey. People are trying to pay for that. But it's so funny, because it really speaks to like our perspectives, and kind of what we talked about last week of like, what the truth is really up to like what we decide it is. You know,
exactly.
You could decide your hair is awful, or you could decide like.
And what you decide creates your reality, right?
Yes. Yeah. Lo said, how you feel about yourself affects your day. And Gina said, I permed my hair for years. Yes, honey. I remember in the 80s. Honey, I remember all those ladies had perms and hairspray and aqua.
I remember the smell. My friend used to perm her hair all the time, and I will never forget the smell of her perm. It was aggressive.
Yeah. So I mean, it is. It's funny. It's just side note. So, you know, this girl that was there before me, her hair was like yours. And this lady is like a curl magician, the hairdresser. Because the lady, her hair was like yours. It looked like a wave almost. And when she left, she had like these bouncing curls. I was like, what is this lady doing in the shop? I have no idea. But she was doing some pretty amazing thing.
She's a hair wizard.
She is a curl wizard is what she is. But anyway, yeah. So
hi, Kristen.
That was my big
we all have hair issues. Yeah. She said that your hair looks great, Yolanda.
Oh my God. Okay. Time out. Everybody pause for the cause. This Kristen is like my very first best friend of my entire life. Do you hear
Aw.
me? No, like really. From Massachusetts. Oh my
Aw,
gosh.
that's so
Hi,
cute.
Chris. Yeah. And we've stayed in touch all these years. Like, can you imagine from like, I was in kindergarten, she was in first grade.
Oh, I love that. Oh,
Yeah. Hi,
that's cool.
honey. She said, I can't cut it short ever. Yeah. Thank you, babe. Yeah. Hey, Stano. But yeah, I don't know. Our perspectives, just like Lo was saying, it can ruin your whole day if
Yeah.
you stay stuck in the story of like whatever it is. I
And
mean,
so that's what we talked about last time, the choice of perspective, right? Is
yeah,
we're choosing to create that reality, which may be negative. And all we really have to do is change our mind about the perspective that or the lens that we're seeing through and change everything.
yeah. It reminds me of too. I think that this came up last week, but how I told you I had that like epiphany. It's like finally the Buddhist stuff was like clicking in my brain, and I finally understood if I'm not in my gratitude, like I'm literally in my suffering. And like when I'm in that complaint and all of this, or like I'm in my upset, or I'm in these stories, I am just, it's like a train to hell. And I'm just like, oh, I hate everything, and everything's annoying, and everything is aggravating. Everything sets you off. And those are the times like I really have to stop and check myself, because yeah, just like she said, it'll ruin an entire, it could ruin your week. Forget a day. It could ruin like your month.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the big reasons that we're doing this topic is to create a mindful awareness of our behaviors that are kind of illusory in a sense. You know, we create these stories and these perspectives, and it's like a freaking boat that we build this arc of a story, and then we jump on that arc and we go sailing away in it, you know, and we set ourselves on that one linear path.
But it can be hard. I mean, of course, like sometimes we get into a certain mode of thought, or like certain things come up, and it can be hard to come out of it. And just so anyone watching knows, I mean, like sometimes we just have to let ourselves process whatever it is, even if it's a story or perspective that is rough or tough. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we just have to go through it to get through it. Like you have to let it move through your system. You have to let yourself process, let it out, so it doesn't get stuck in there somewhere. But then you have to have that moment of like conscious recognition and choice of like, okay, now that's out. Like now, how am I going to move forward? And what can I do to shift
Mm-hmm.
my mood, my mind, my whatever?
Yeah. Well, that's part of the attachment too, right? We create these stories and we attach to it. And even if it's a bad feeling or a negative story, we still kind of want to stay hung on to it for whatever reason. And that's a whole nother area of looking into the self-discovery and understanding why. And then when you figure out the why, making the choice to create a different perspective so that you can clear out that which is causing you the suffering.
Yeah.
Suffering is not necessary.
No, it's not. But that's the thing, is just like, so many times we feel like we don't know how to come out of it. But the thing
Right.
is that sometimes there's like a time and a place for the process. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we have to let things move through us. And there's so many ways. So like, yeah, Tiffany and I, like she may hit the yoga mat, I may go sit and meditate, but those things aren't for everyone. I mean, you can also journal, right? You can scream. I think
Go
you
on a walk.
mentioned last week, didn't you tell somebody to scream in their car? Did you say that last week on the thing?
I don't think that was me, but somebody's tried to tell me to scream in my car before, and I try, and it sounds like this. I go, ah, like
That's
quite
it?
literally.
It
Yeah,
has to be like guttural. Are you
I
kidding
can't do
me?
it. I don't know how to, I
What?
literally don't know how to do it.
I need to take you to
I
like a
do it.
smash house.
Yeah, I do it. And then like, I'm like, did anybody see that? And I'm like, that was so dumb.
Oh,
I'm like, that was useless.
well, that's another thing too. I mean, like sometimes we like cling to our perspectives or point of view because we don't want to upset anybody. So like we'll hold
Yeah.
on to our emotion, we hold on to our process and lock it all in because we won't disturb anybody else. Listen, if you need to disturb a friend, call me, okay? Call me. You could disturb me all day because I will just hold it. Hold it. I will
You're
be
such a good friend,
immovable.
Yolanda. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
any day. I'm here for you. You could call me and scream.
Lo, she's my friend that holds space for me. I call her sometimes, and she's really good at it. Thanks, Lo. Appreciate it.
Gina says, yes. Yeah. And it kind of like loops back to where we started. Like sometimes you have to have a friend that you can just vent and maybe ask instead of just like unloading on somebody. Maybe you have to know which friends can take it, because you may have a friend who after you unload, they feel like crud because they don't know how to manage their space. And that's just sad. So you have to know like too, like who can actually handle it, but also, you know, be mindful in your dumping, you know?
Yep.
You could do it without
let somebody know you're venting, not just dumping on them.
Yes. Yeah. And know if it's a friend that can handle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
and if you're a friend that can't handle it, let somebody know. Because I've had that bite me in the ass before, thinking that it was somebody that I could share this experience with and have their support. And it came back around like months later where they're just like, I can't handle you when you're like this. And I'm like, but that's what friends do. And I was just like, and it really like, I suffered a lot from that experience, and our friendship kind of shifted to some degree because now I'm, they didn't let me know, they didn't take inventory of themselves. And, it's just, that's what happens.
Well, okay. So Lo said, what if you're a dump truck and you drive around all day picking out of people's trash? Well, there's like a couple things. So one, I wanted to ask you about all of you too, the ladies watching, like when you do have, someone bringing their perspective to you, and it's a perspective that you don't necessarily agree with, or maybe you're not in the mood to hold that space. Like, how do you guys deal with that? And how do you deal with it? I mean, do you feel some kind of obligation to help shift somebody's perspective, and are you willing to say sometimes like, friend, I can't today, like today's not the day?
I feel like it's my duty to help people shift their perspectives, solicited or not. So I have to work on that myself.
Oh, I'm biting my tongue on that one. Oh yeah?
Is that a Scorpio?
That your point of view?
Is that why?
I didn't say anything.
What was the second half of that question you asked?
Do you feel an obligation to, try to change someone's perspective, or do you also say no when you just can't be the person that holds that space when someone is in their upset? This conversation seems like a hodgepodge of our two discussions of perspective and empath.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I keep forgetting the question that you keep asking.
Well, you must have a hard time with it. Do you ever tell people no, Tiffany?
Yes, I do. Yes. No, I don't. I don't know. In the past, I hadn't, but going forward and in recent history, I have. Or not so much said no, but like I've let them know, like, hey, I'm a little fragile right now. I'll do the best I can to help you. So like, just let's all be warned, right?
Yes. Okay, so Gina said, I always listen to others, but they are not always available for me. Frustrating. Yes, ma'am. Let's chew on that one for a moment.
Yes, let's. I actually had that conversation with a friend just the other morning. Mm-hmm. And that was a big perspective conversation too. And it's hard, because when you're in the thick of something, you're not receiving. You give, and you're not receiving. And sometimes it's really hard to shift our perspective from that one place we're not getting it. There could be 99 other places out there that we will get it from, but that mm-hmm. one's not giving it to us, and we hyper focus on it. And we're just like, that's the one I want to change. But you can't change the external things. You can only change the internal, which is the perspective.
Well, one of the things with that stands out for me, because Gina, I had that, and I actually just had this discussion last Friday, where I have always been the friend, like any of my friends know, and before I did this work, it was just like, come tell me whatever. I'm not going to judge. I'm going to listen, blah, blah, blah. But in the times where I felt like I was upset, I felt like no one was there. But then I came to the realization it was partially my fault, because I never said to anyone like, hey, can you
Yeah.
listen, friend? Like, because I think of always being on the receiving end, I knew what that felt like to always take on people's stuff. So I was like hyper aware that I didn't want to do that to anyone else. So I
Hmm.
always, I had this habit or this pattern of just dealing with everything myself because I didn't want to burden anyone else with my stuff, even though I was available to them. But then I also had this resentment, like, why doesn't anybody see that I need, someone to call me? But I
Yeah.
had created this
Right.
illusion that I was always okay, even if I wasn't. So it was my
Yeah.
fault, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And the other piece that goes along with that too, I think, is if you're the person that doesn't get that in reciprocation,
Mm-hmm.
is knowing what you're not only just asking for your needs, but
Yeah.
knowing what your needs are that you have to ask for. And that's really hard because
It
then
is.
then we do need to, maybe the reason why we're always helping somebody else is because we don't want to look at our own needs and things that we need help with. And then once we do, nobody's there. And it's like, well, how long have you actually been sitting with your needs and putting the APB out there like, hey, here's actually what I need, or really understanding what your needs are.
And, I mean, like when we're really honest and look at it, um, we have some comments too. When we really look at it ourselves, I mean, I could look at my entire circle of friends and I know I could call any single one of them any day and be like, hey, friend, I need to talk. It was totally my thing of like not wanting to project a burden and blah, blah, blah. It was
Yeah.
all made up in my head. But meanwhile, here I am frustrated at them that they always call the dump on me. So glad I worked through that. So Lo said, yes, hyper aware of the burden and didn't want to burden anyone else. How do I get past that? And Gina said, I'm always the one keeping everyone sane. Yes. How about those apples? Yeah. So, I mean, from my experience, and you could speak to this too, I just had to get over my own discomfort and like force myself to just be like, hey, friend, I need to tell you something, or hey, friend, I need to talk. So, it's uncomfortable the first few times because we're not used to doing it. But once we do, it just, it's very freeing. I'm telling you, it's
Yeah.
liberating. And it's great that we have people in our lives and communities, or even like here, you guys can dump all over this comment section right now. Like, we're here to listen. So you
Yeah.
have to try.
Yeah, Lorena, a really good example is like last weekend when we were talking and then I all of a sudden just started crying. It was actually really hard. Like we were discussing a topic and it was really bothering me. And all of a sudden my emotions, like they were bubbling up and I was trying to like keep them down, keep them down, keep them down. And then they just they went and I was like, okay, fine. And that, like, I felt it in my body. Like I felt, yeah, I felt all of that going on. And it was weird because it wasn't necessarily conscious choice to have it all bubbling up or to even let it go. But when I became aware of it, I was like, oh, this is what's happening. And I'm in a safe place and I know what I need. So, like, let's just let this shit fly. Luckily, Lorena's a really great friend for me with that. But
I think what you're saying too, it reminds me of like how important it is for us to process things as they come up, or share when we need to, or ask for help and support when we need it. Because when we don't, it does start to just naturally build up, and we do get to our breaking point where we explode. And then the perception is that we're crazy because we're just like an
right.
emotional, just like, eruption, and people are like, whoa, like what? Whereas if we just allow ourselves to like deal with it as it's coming up, we can probably share and express from a space that's more um, gentle and easy. Gina said a purge. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you,
Um, I think we still need to kind of address that question of how do you get past the burden of being hyper aware? And I don't know that you
the
get,
burden, I didn't even see that.
Lorena says hyper aware of the burden and don't want to burden anyone else with it. So like when we feel like a burden to somebody else,
Yeah.
how do we get past that? And I think, well, since we're talking about perspective, I think it's shifting the perspective that you or your problems are a burden to somebody, especially somebody that's a friend, because it's not. And
Again, know your circle, because
yeah,
there are some friends. Yeah, you have to like know your tribe, like know your community, because there are certain friends, probably not the best ones to call when you really need support, and it just is what it is. But surely if there are people that you know would be there for you, it's like you just have to find that inner strength to say, please help me.
yeah,
Or listen, please just listen, please just sit with me.
yeah.
Can I come
And
over and
maybe start
cry?
examining too, like one, as we were discussing, what your needs are, and two, why, what the benefit of releasing that stuff is, knowing what your needs are and then finding somebody to talk to that will help you with them, prioritizing and taking an inventory of that, of why it's necessary before we get to the point where you explode and then, you know,
And sometimes you have to ask yourself too, like, well, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, like, I really had to have like that, what do they call, like, come to Jesus moment with myself, because I had to really look at why I felt like I was going to be a burden, and why I chose that perspective of like someone's going to be bothered if I need to talk or share. That was all my projection. It was all my story.
yeah,
And I had to really sit and think like, well, why do I think that? Because I
right,
really don't mind when people tell me their things. I really don't mind holding space for my friends. So why on earth would I think that someone else wouldn't do the same for me? So I had to work through my own crap around that. And that is what really then kind of like allowed me to tiptoe towards playing with it.
well, I do worry that my Scorpio-ness is too much of a burden sometimes. I just walk up with, I'm like, here's all my intensity, can you help me?
Buddha's in my mouth. What signs do we have here in the chat? Can you guys just type it out? What signs are you? Just out of curiosity. I'm not gonna say anything about your Scorpio-ness, but what I will say about Scorpio is that it is a fixed sign and it's fixed emotion. So you guys are like
Yeah,
emotional containers,
yeah.
There's highs and lows to that, of course.
You're a
Let's see.
Cancer,
We have a
another water
Cancer,
sign.
a
Water signs
Pisces.
everywhere.
Ah! No, but my BFF brings it down to Virgo. Ground everybody out. Thanks, Chris. Oh, Gemini. Yes, I have some air representation. Oh, thank goodness. Now it's a good balance. I guess the only thing we're missing is some fire.
Do we
But
have any Earth?
yeah, Virgo. Kristen's a Virgo. She just had a birthday, so happy belated. And yeah, so we have a lot of water, a little bit of air, and a little bit of earth. No fire. Imagine that. You seem so spicy. But okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, this is coming up now too, just to say, let's just like in a very vague way, because we all do have our ways of processing and our ways of internalizing and translating like how we perceive. So just in the mode of like the signs, let's just say elements, okay? So like the water signs, they are more feeling. So you guys, the water signs that are here, you may be more sensitive to how people say things, like the feeling behind people's words and the feeling behind people's actions, And if that is true for you, you just want to be mindful, like when you do feel like, oh, like, why are you yelling at me? Or why are you this? And people are like, I'm just talking. Or like if you notice that certain things trigger you, it is good to like stop and think like, okay, am I just being sensitive? Is this my sensitivity, my empathic nature that's tuning in to something before we run with the story? That's always good. Were you going to say something, Scorpio?
No.
Do you ever do that?
Do I ever do what?
Feel beyond people's words?
Oh, yeah. I think it's the only thing I do.
Ah!
Um,
We have
sorry, I'm just trying to process all of the elements with perspectives. It's hard to
yeah.
get beyond the emotional one.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, for you, I guess it would be. But for the Gemini and myself, the air signs, we're more heady. So like the trap for us could be is we may overthink things. We may be to go down the rabbit hole of dissecting, picking apart, looking at every single angle of it. Like, honey, we will think something until like it is just listen. So that could be like our thing that we have to really pay attention to, like how much we're thinking about something. The earth signs, they're pretty chill. I mean, the Virgos, one thing is they can be like hypercritical, not just of others, but of themselves. But it comes from the lens of, so if you know a Virgo in your life, like you may just like consider, sometimes they seem like they're picking on things, but it's because they want to help make it better. It's not coming from a mean place. Like they just want to know how to make stuff better. So, if you know what people's motivation or intention is, or like the tendency that they may have in how they process things, a lot of times it helps us to not fall into our own judgments, is the point. Let's see. Coley says, I'm the queen of the rabbit hole. Are you the Gemini? Let's see. Yeah. Lo says she's drowning in feelings since becoming a mother. Oh, wow. And then Gina said, it's tough being a new mom. You'll be great. Oh, that's sweet.
See, Lorena, that's a perspective shift right there.
You guys get poor Tiffany so distracted. Look at her. She gets so lost in reading the messages and feeling into what you all are saying. Like she can't chew gum and walk.
I know. Well, you know what it is? It's because this is what happened. I'm losing sight of perspective. Our topic was perspective, and now I'm like, where did we leave off? How do we get back? What do we do?
Yeah. But I think like we've already covered perspective in the last videos. You guys can go back. But I mean, like today we're talking more of like the lenses, I guess, of how our perspectives come to be, how we can manage them, those type. Yeah. Don't short circuit on me, okay?
Yeah, I'm not short circuiting. I'm totally short circuiting.
Your face.
I can't get my wires back together.
Okay. Oh.
Somebody ask a question quick.
Wait, I just have to say, because this is on Facebook Live, but it'll also be on our podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast and like, what is happening?
I'm melting down.
To our Facebook channel and you'll see it happening. It'll all make so much more sense. Mel said she could tell too. See?
Maybe somebody will make one of those.
A hug.
No. I just need direction.
Let's all hold space.
I was looking at my notes. I don't know. What
are your notes, babe? My notes. Seriously, let's bring it back in for you. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. I
think that for the third episode of what we're talking about perspective, it was so bad. This has never happened before. If I didn't have these earplugs in, you would be able to see the steam coming out.
Oh, that is hilarious. Okay, what are we talking about, Tiffy? Now that we have like 10 minutes left.
Okay. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the third piece of our perspective conversation that we're putting up for our Patreons is about how perspective impacts mind, body, and energy.
Yeah.
Not just the Mind, Body, Energy project, but our own minds, our own physical bodies, and our energy.
Yes. Was that just an announcement? Was that just...
I'm starting acting classes next week, so this can be rectified. I don't think I've ever seen Yolanda laugh this hard.
Because I don't know what's happening. Okay. All right. I'm here.
I don't know either, which is kind of a disaster. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Where are the wine glasses? That's what I asked for a question to be asked, and Gina asked where the wine glasses are. I know. I want to know where the bottle is. Okay. Lorena would like help to figure out how to look past her own issues so that she can care about her husband's issues. That's a big one.
Oh, yeah. Wait, please help me to figure out how to look past my own issues so I can care about my husband's issues. Well, can't you do both?
What did you just say?
Can't do both. I mean, because you
Can
don't
you do
want
both?
to sidestep and like
Yeah.
disregard yourself. Do you mean, is it like a situation where you have differences in opinion about one particular thing? But whatever it is, like, you have to take care of you. Like, you can't bypass you and constantly like show up, because you will fall into that resentment. You will burn out, especially you're a new mom, honey. Like, you got to keep this thing full of all kinds of goodies. So
Yeah.
yeah, don't.
And shifting your perspective isn't, it's not shutting down your needs or the way you're dealing with something.
Mhm.
Um, it's also, you know, looking at your situation or your issues from a different angle, and then maybe helping that person see theirs from a different angle as well.
Yep.
Or just even get them thinking about their issues, because they might not even be thinking about their issues.
And what we perceive as their issue may not be an issue to them. That's always fun. But
That's
that
true.
happens a lot in life. Like, man, like, we really think somebody has issues and we think they need to fix their issue, and they think they're fine. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, again, it really
So
depends.
understanding perspectives,
Yeah.
having conversations about trying to understand how somebody perceives themselves or ourselves.
Okay, honey, I don't want to skip over what you were saying. You were sharing what we're going to share with our Patreons, but were you saying that as an announcement, or were you going to segue into a conversation? Now I'm choking.
I don't know. I don't even know. Um, sorry I did this to you.
I'm so hot. I can't.
Well, I also had in my notes how perspectives impact behaviors, not only just choices, but behaviors.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, totally, how we view something and what we believe is going to like motivate our reaction and responses to so many things, and what we do or don't do. And it reminds me of, I was just talking to someone about this, about how some people, we look at a lot of people in our lives or just out there in the world, and we may be envious of them. Like, how do they do that? Oh, it looks like they're following their path and purpose. Or like, how do people do all of these things? There's no way I could do it. And it's like, but the only difference is the perception and the belief and how we perceive what is possible. Because there could be someone else who is also a mom, also like mirrors you in a lot of ways, or like also a single person that mirrors you in a lot of ways, whatever your story is. And the only difference between you and them is that they had the point of view that they could do it and that they were
Yeah.
going to do it, and they took the steps to do it, and now they're doing it.
And,
Versus if you're in your story of can't, then that's really the only difference.
yeah. And listen, our society isn't exactly set up for us to have malleable perspectives. All of the energies are floating into one space of like, if you want to do something, here's how to do it. Go to Instagram with people with the most followers, and that's how you do it. And if you think you can't do it or you perceive you can't, then you're not going to. And that's a load of crap, if you ask me. I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and he was talking about a friend of his who had a business, and because we were talking about social media, and he was saying that his friend's business is doing well, but she had not a lot of followers on social media, where a similar company had a shit ton of followers. Sorry, swear. Um, had a ton of followers, but the business actually wasn't doing well. But yet this person whose business was going well was focusing on failed success because of the amount of followers, and it's like, well, which one of those lenses do you want to put on?
Honey, social
Which
media has
is,
everybody twisted.
it does.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really great thing to call attention to get people to, that's a great example of perspective, and really diving into that. It warps all of our thinking.
It
Like,
reminds me of, even like, so many of us know this, right? Like, I always hear stories of like people see their friends like posting all of these amazing things, but then behind the scenes, they're like, oh, the person's so sad. But on social media, they look like they're living their best life ever. So there's a lot in our world where what we are seeing and what is being projected out is not necessarily true. And even in our own lives, in our own bubbles, a lot of what we see on the surface level and what we are perceiving is not necessarily true, so to speak. So that's why, like, it is so important for us to like take those like thoughtful pauses and really consider our points of view. Like, does this really make sense? Like, why am I adding this together this way? What is the possible perspective of the other person? Like, there's so many elements we can look at before jumping to conclusions or making an assessment that something is, true or not.
Yeah. And if the point of view is even our own, I think a lot of times we take on perspectives that are not ours, and then that changes our energy and our behavior. And
Totally.
then we don't even realize that it's taken us on this trip that we didn't sign up for. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden our perspective becomes somebody else's, but we think it's ours, and it doesn't fit what is necessarily correct for our own good.
That's why you hear so much, just for everyone watching too, this is why you hear so much about people saying like this work is like so introspective, and like you hear like, oh, the answers are within, go within. Like, it sounds like woo woo and all this, but no, but it's really true, because that's the only way we really start to identify or recognize what we're functioning from, and like what we're allowing ourselves to take in as true. And we start to like identify like really what we're reacting from and what our points of views are. And does this come from like something my mom told me, or is this like what I really think, or is this what Tiffany told me, or is this what I really think, So it is such a good thing to really just take time. And it's not like you have to like schedule it on your calendar. Just literally pay attention to your way of processing things, and pay attention to when you're seeing anything any particular way, and just like don't just glaze over it and go straight into reaction, but sit with it for a second. I want to make sure we get the comments before we have to go. Coley said, I do that all the time. What I think are the issues for someone else, they have no idea or don't think it's an issue. All the time. Talk about difference in perspective, right? Gina said, a lot of times the people with the biggest mouths and egos are the ones struggling. Honey, true, so much. And the low, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, there's so much juicy stuff we can dive into. I mean, clearly we could talk about perspective for 10 days because we've already done it for 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah. So is there anything around this, like just in wrapping up this particular conversation, that you would recommend for people, or just anything that stood out to you in this week of exploration?
In this week of exploration, I think because what happened to me this week as I was listening to people talk, I started to see other ways that they could have viewed the situation, and whether I voiced that or not, I actually didn't. Big surprise. But as you listen to other people and see how maybe they could view it from a different angle, start to notice that it is a perspective, and that there's so many different ways of looking at something. And we're trying to combine more than just one. Like, I find myself having multiple perspectives on something, and then I talk to somebody and it adds like 17 more perspectives to it. I'm like, whoa, there's like a million ways to see this, and it makes us a little bit more, I think, tolerant and compassionate, to be honest. If we start opening up the camera lens to envelop more than just like what we think we want to see, or what's been shown to us to see.
So true. And, one of the things that a lot of people focus on, so many of us, is like what we want in our lives. And like, I remember a couple of years ago, like manifestation was like the big thing that everyone was talking about. And I was having a conversation with one of my clients yesterday, and she is like aligned. She's like in the zone right now, right? And she had this realization that part of how she got there was widening her perspective. Kind of like what I was saying earlier. Sometimes when we feel stuck in our lives, or stuck in like just like frustration or upset, it may be that we just have this very narrow point of view, or we think that things have to be, unfolding in a very particular way, or we think that things have to, just whatever it is. Like, if we need to find resolution to something, if we think there's only one resolution and that's all we're focused on, it'll drive us crazy if that one thing doesn't happen. Whereas when we like step back into the possibility of like, wait, there may be other options, there may be other ways to see this, there may be other ways for this to just work out, it can listen, it can take a lot of stress away. And it also can open you up to that alignment of things working out in ways you personally couldn't see or perceive today.
Right.
So yeah, that was a good one.
Amen.
Yeah, I was so glad when she told me that about herself. I was like, girl, you better get it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one to drive the point home on this.
Yeah. How much we impact our lives. Okay. Gina said that's why I don't watch the news. And Lo said, in your opinion, what wine is best to provide when you're about to dump all of our friends?
Lorena and I are meeting in Arizona this weekend.
Oh,
yeah.
How nice. I recommend a Malbec. But I like Malbec. It's not for everyone.
Well, we'll just pick up a lot.
Yeah, just go ahead and get like one of each. Yeah. Kind of do like a flight for yourself.
Ooh,
but I hope you have fun in Arizona, Dollface. And for our Patreons, we will be posting the video for you all that we just
I introduced.
That she introduced the PSA.
Yeah, in my PSA.
Yeah. So we will be back. And then, of course, next week for everyone, we will have a new podcast for you all. And we haven't discussed a new topic. So
we're
we'll let
open
you
to
know
suggestions.
as soon as we know. Yeah, if there's some topic that you guys want to dive into or you want to bring to the table, we can have that as an option for our next discussion. So thank you so much, Lo and Gina and Kristen and who else is here? Coley, everyone who came in today. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time.
Thank you. Have a good night.